I wasn't invited to my daughter's wedding. Not because I didn't raise her, not because I wasn't there for every school night, every scraped knee, every broken heart, but because I had the audacity to be a mother who gave birth to 2 daughters, and then walked away from a man who called me a failure for it. They said I was bad luck, that my presence would taint the day, that I should stay quiet, be generous like her father. So I did what any mother would do. I gave them exactly what they deserved and took back everything they thought they were entitled to. The invitation never came, but the group text did. Hi, everyone. As we approach the big day, just a reminder, Mom will not be attending the ceremony. Let's respect Madison and Brandon's wishes. Thanks, just like that. No phone call, no conversation, no courage. Just a message tucked between cake updates and flower arrangements. I stared at it for a long time, tried to imagine my younger daughter's fingers tapping it out. So casually, so confidently. Like banning your own mother from your wedding was just a practical detail. I didn't respond. What was there to say? That I paid for her college, that I worked 2 jobs so she could take ballet, that I gave up everything when her father walked out and left me with nothing but silence and 2 crying girls. No, she already knew all that. She just didn't care. 3 days later, her fiancé's mother, Nancy, called me. Her voice was syrup and salt. Eleanor, I just want to thank you for understanding. I know it must be hard not to be there, but honestly, it's probably for the best. Madison wants the energy to be pure, as if I were some virus, as if being the woman who survived abandonment, poverty, and shame made me dirty. I didn't yell. I just smiled through the phone and said, "You're welcome." Then I hung up and opened my filing cabinet. It was time to stop being generous and start being fair. The house they planned a honeymoon in mine, bought it in my name years ago, transferred temporarily while Madison was in college. The savings bond they planned to cash started with my paycheck from a night shift cleaning hospital beds. The man they praised in the wedding video, the one who stayed, he left when Madison was 4 and hadn't paid a dime of child support since. They thought they erased me. They forgot who taught them how to spell. They always said I brought bad luck. Not when I married into the Brooks family. Not when I showed up to every Sunday dinner with a homemade pie and a respectful smile. No, the curse began the moment I gave birth to Olivia, a girl. Then 2 years later, it got worse. Another girl, Madison. And suddenly, everything was my fault. Richard, my husband at the time, didn't even hold Madison when she was born. He looked at the nurse and asked, "Are you sure that's it? That should have been my sign to leave." But women like me, we're taught to endure. His mother, Nancy, patted my hand in the hospital and said, "Maybe next time, dear. A boy will bring us balance." I nodded like I hadn't just pushed life into the world. Balance. As if daughters were errors waiting to be corrected. The years that followed were full of polite poison. Christmas cards addressed only to the Brooks men. Family photos where I was asked to stand at the end. School tuition paid only after I begged, and always with a reminder of how fortunate I was to be supported. When Richard left, he blamed me. "You gave me 2 daughters and nothing else," he said. "That's not a legacy. That's a burden." Then he packed a bag and disappeared. I found out later he'd moved in with a woman who had 3 sons. Go figure. I raised Olivia and Madison alone. No help, no child support, just long hours, low wages, and whispered apologies when the electricity bill came late. and somehow I never stopped loving them. Even when Madison started parroting her father's lines about how men carry the family name, about how being soft isn't strong. She was 12 the first time she rolled her eyes at me for crying. She was 16 when she started calling her dad the strong parent. She was 22 when she told me not to wear red to her bridal shower because it was too attention-seeking. I wore beige. I brought a gift. And I smiled when Nancy toasted Richard as the rock of their blended family. So when they called me bad luck for wanting to attend the wedding, I didn't flinch. I've been called worse, lived worse, survived worse. But bad luck. No. Bad luck is marrying a man who leaves, raising a daughter who forgets, spending decades giving love to people who confuse it for weakness, and still having enough left in you to fight back. I sat at Naomi's dining table with a manila folder and 2 mugs of black coffee between us. She was the only one I told, because Naomi was the only one who'd seen it all on the day Richard left, the night I pawned my engagement ring to pay rent, the bruised pride, the years of shrinking. "You really want to do this?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I just opened the folder. Inside, the deed to the house they planned a honeymoon in, the account summary of the savings bond in my name, a copy of the prenup Madison never knew I helped pay for, and most importantly, receipts, not emotional ones, real ones. She used your money to help him. Naomi asked, eyes scanning the highlighted transactions. I nodded. 60 grand pulled last year, split into 3 parts, disguised as tuition assistance, went directly into an account under Richard's name. Naomi cursed under her breath. They used your generosity to clean up his mess. I didn't flinch. They used my name, I said, and now I'm taking it back. First stop, my lawyer. Claire had handled my divorce 10 years ago. She barely blinked when I slid the file across the desk. Still quiet, she said with a small smile. Still surgical. I like that about her. Can I revoke the property transfer, I asked. She checked the paperwork. Absolutely. It was never finalized. You're still listed as primary. They just assumed you wouldn't look. They always assumed I wouldn't look. They built their wedding on stolen ground. I was just here to take back the land. Next, the bank. I froze the joint account Madison didn't know was still technically mine. Locked the funds. Then I pulled the plug on the automatic payments for utilities subscriptions, and yes, her wedding planner's final installment. I didn't say a word. I just watched the little failed payment emails roll in one by one. The last move was quietest of all. I emailed the venue. Subject liability correction request. Because if they were going to exclude me from the wedding, they couldn't do it in a building with my name on the ownership clause. Within 48 hours, their reservation was flagged. Not canceled, just paused. Enough to make them scramble, enough to make them call. And when they did, I didn't pick up. Because this wasn't about attention, it was about respect, and they'd spent years pretending I didn't exist. Now they'd learn exactly what that felt like. It started with the venue. A red hold notice showed up on Madison's event planner app. One tap later, and she was on the phone with Brandon screaming. They're saying there's an issue with liability, something about co-ownership. Brandon tried to brush it off. My mom said she'd handle it. Of course she did, because Nancy always assumed money solved everything even when it wasn't hers. Then came the florist. They backed out, unpaid deposit. The same happened with the caterer, the cake designer, even the DJ. Each one received the same message final payment failed, resubmit card or cancel booking, and every one of those failed payments came from the joint account I'd frozen. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it to teach them something no one else ever had. Actions have consequences, especially when they're funded by someone you disrespected. Then came the phone call. Madison. She didn't start with hi, didn't ask how I was. She just hissed, "What the hell are you doing?" I leaned against my kitchen counter, stared out the window, and sipped my coffee. "Excuse me, don't play dumb. You froze the account. You're blocking the venue. You're ruining everything. I let the silence sit. Let her fill it. You're doing this because I didn't invite you, aren't you? You're trying to destroy me because you're bitter." I exhaled, calm. "I'm doing this," I said slowly, "because you built a wedding with stolen bricks and painted me out of the picture like I was never part of the foundation." She didn't respond, so I kept going. "You used money I earned to clean up your father's debt. You lied to your fiancé. You humiliated me in front of his entire family. And now you're mad because I took back what was already mine. That money was a gift." "No," I said. "That money was a test, and you failed." She hung up. I smiled, because for the first time in years, she finally realized she couldn't silence me anymore. By the end of the week, everything unraveled. The venue canceled officially. Vendors pulled out. Madison had to move the ceremony to Brandon's uncle's backyard, and the house they planned to move into after the honeymoon sold. Back to me. I changed the locks, sent the deed to her email. Subject line correction. Brandon called next. He was calmer, more calculated. "I just want to understand," he said. "We've worked hard. This is about family, legacy." "You mean the legacy where I was erased?" I asked. He didn't answer. So I said, "Brandon, you may be marrying my daughter, but that doesn't make you my son. And if you think you can marry into something you helped destroy, then you're not building a legacy. You're marrying a lie." He never called again. But Nancy did, screaming. I let it go to voicemail, and when she said, "You're nothing," just a bitter woman with no place at this table, I smiled and whispered to myself, "I built the damn table." The video leaked 2 days before the wedding. I didn't find it. Naomi did. "Don't watch it," she said, eyes glassy. But I clicked play anyway. It was a rehearsal dinner toast. Brandon stood beside Madison, glass in hand, smile too wide. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he said, "but especially Madison's father, Richard. A true example of grace, strength, and devotion." The camera panned to Richard laughing, holding court like a king who'd never fled the castle. Then Madison stepped forward. She lifted her glass, her voice clear, steady. "And to my dad, for showing me how a real man protects his family, and for never leaving even when things got hard. Some people run. Some people ruin things. You rebuilt. People clapped." Nancy dabbed her eyes. "No one mentioned my name. Not once." Naomi muted the video. "I'm so sorry." I smiled, because that was the moment the grief ended. I wasn't mourning a daughter anymore. I was burying a myth. The next morning, Madison called, not to apologize, to threaten. "I know what you're doing," she snapped. "You're trying to ruin everything because you're bitter and bored." I let her finish. "Brandon's family is starting to ask questions. You're embarrassing us." There it was, that word again, embarrassment. The label they'd always saved for me, not for the man who left, not for the family who watched, but for the woman who stayed and kept breathing when they expected her to disappear. Do you hear yourself? I said. She scoffed. You've always made everything about you. No, I said. I made everything about you. Your food, your school, your dress, your dance classes, your peace. And now, she snapped, now I make it about me. You're pathetic, she whispered. You can't stand not being the center of attention. That's funny, I replied, because I was never allowed to be in the picture to begin with. Silence. Then do not show up to the wedding. I didn't answer. She waited. I stayed silent. And finally, she hung up. Naomi looked at me from across the table. What are you going to do? I stared out the window. The only thing left, I said. Let them feel what it's like to build a future on top of someone you've buried alive. The group chat used to be called Brooks Family Only. I never named it that. Madison did. Back when she still thought it was cute to coordinate birthday messages and share blurry photos of Sunday brunches. But somewhere along the way, only stopped meaning exclusive. It meant exclusion. I wasn't removed, just silenced. They never kicked me out. They just stopped speaking to me directly, only tagged each other, only said parents when they meant Richard and Nancy, only used us in the context of not me. So I watched quietly, for weeks, cake photos, venue changes, lists of who would walk whom down the aisle. Brandon would walk his mother, Madison would walk with her father, Nancy would light the family candle, and me. Apparently, I didn't exist until today. The message came in at 9:42 a.m. from Nancy. Just a reminder, Eleanor's not to be included in the procession or group photos. Let's keep things elegant and uncomplicated. Elegant, uncomplicated, cruel. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then typed 3 words, check your inbox, and hit send. At first, nothing, then a flood of notifications, screenshots bouncing between them, gasps, curses. One from Richard, what the hell is this? Another from Madison, Mom, what did you do? Then silence. I waited exactly 1 hour, then posted a final message. Consider this my RSVP. I won't be attending your wedding, but I will be attending your consequences. And I left the group, not just with a tap, with finality. I powered off my phone, poured a glass of wine, and turned on music I hadn't listened to since Olivia's first birthday. Something soft, something that never asked me to explain myself. Because for the first time in decades, I had nothing left to say and everything left to reclaim. The number was $160,000, maybe $1,000. That's how much Brandon's family had gifted in wedding support. Checks, transfers, jewelry, a condo held in trust. A small fortune exchanged for the illusion of legacy. They thought they were investing in bloodlines. What they didn't realize was the bride had already mortgaged their dream to pay for her father's sins. I didn't need to shout it from rooftops. Just one quiet email. Subject for your records. Attachments. A PDF of Madison's withdrawal slips. A signed memo from Richard acknowledging the debt. A Venmo screenshot, $25,000. Dad's treatment urgent and a final line. Your son's future was funded by my past. Within 24 hours, everything broke. Nancy Lee called me. Twice. I didn't answer. But Naomi did. She played me the voicemail later, cackling. This is slander. You're destroying lives. No, Nancy. I was just pointing at the wreckage you kept pretending wasn't on fire. The wedding planner dropped them. Brandon's uncle pulled out his backyard offer. The condo transfer froze mid-signature. And Brandon, he confronted Madison publicly, at the rehearsal, in front of his friends, his family, the pastor. You took their money and gave it to him. You lied to me. over and over, and you erased your mother for this." Madison burst into tears. "Try to unspin it. I was helping my dad. He was sick. We didn't have time to explain. She wouldn't understand." But the room had already turned, because no one likes realizing they were sold a fantasy built on someone else's credit line. Richard didn't even show up that night. Of course he didn't. Cowards never do. He sent a text. "Sorry for the confusion. Not my fault," she offered. He meant Madison, but it might as well have been me, because I had offered my money, my name, my dignity, and now I was done. Later that evening, Olivia called. "Mom, it's happening. Everything you said, it's unraveling." I closed my eyes. "It had to," I said. "Do you feel better?" "No," I replied, "but I feel free." They went ahead with the wedding. After the fallout, the scandal, the screaming matches behind closed doors, they still walked down that aisle. Well, down the driveway, technically. The backyard was hastily dressed in white. The tent was borrowed. The cake was store-bought. The musicians canceled, so they used a Bluetooth speaker. They wanted to prove they were unshaken, that love legacy and keeping up appearances could still save the day. But nothing ruins a wedding faster than the absence of illusion. I didn't go. I didn't need to. People who once whispered behind my back were now calling Naomi, begging for comment. Vendors shared screenshots. One of Nancy's cousins sent me a selfie of the ruined buffet with the caption, "Guess who's not paying their invoice?" I didn't respond. Some endings don't need applause, just stillness. But the real ending came later that night, after the vows, after the forced smiles, after the last guest had finally stopped pretending they didn't smell the rot beneath the roses. It was the staircase. Too narrow, too slippery. Brandon tried to carry Madison inside some grand gesture to close the evening, but he slipped. Hard. Concrete doesn't care about romance. The impact cracked his spine. He screamed so loud the neighbors thought it was fireworks. Madison fainted, woke up screaming in the ER. I got the news the next morning. Naomi read me the article, "Groom Paralyzed in Tragic Fall. Newlywed Weekend Ends in ICU." Then she looked at me, waited for me to say something. I poured my coffee, finally said, "Is it bad? I don't feel bad." She shook her head. "It's not bad. It's honest. The hospital bills were massive. Insurance wouldn't cover the venue injury. Technically, it was private property, not registered as an event site. Nancy tried to call me again. I blocked her. Again. Madison sent a message. Just one line. "Please help. I can't do this alone." I read it, then deleted it. Because the one time I couldn't do it alone, she told me I wasn't invited. Some people learn through love, others through loss. But the worst ones, they only learn through collapse. And I'd already rebuilt myself from mine. Let them learn how. The call came at 6:17 a.m. I let it ring. Didn't recognize the number. Didn't expect compassion to come from a 646 area code. But curiosity wins when you survive betrayal long enough. I picked up. A man's voice. Young. Nervous. "Is this Mrs. Brooks? Eleanor Brooks?" "Yes. I'm calling from St. Luke's. Richard Brooks was brought in last night. He didn't make it." Silence. Not grief, not shock. Just silence. "He had a stroke," the nurse said. "Massive, sudden. He collapsed outside a pharmacy." Then a pause. "Your name was the last thing he said. Just one word, Eleanor." I closed my eyes, not to weep, just to let the weight settle. Not of love lost, but of history. Closing a chapter I didn't have to finish myself. I didn't go to the hospital, didn't claim the body, didn't write an obituary. Madison tried to. She posted a black and white photo on her feed. Caption, Good men never truly leave us. The comments were turned off. Smart girl, because the only thing Richard ever left was a mess. A woman raising 2 kids alone, a daughter who learned to perform grief, and a name he no longer had the right to speak. That night, I sat alone in the living room, lit a candle, not for him, for the version of me that once waited for his car to return, that once begged for his apology, that once believed silence meant he just didn't know how to say sorry. Now I know better. Some men don't say sorry. They say your name too late, when they need to feel human one last time. Olivia called. "You okay?" "I'm steady." "You don't sound sad?" "I'm not." "Do you feel free?" I smiled. I think I already was. Some ghosts don't haunt you. They just wait. For the moment you finally stop opening the door. And Richard, he died knocking. Olivia's guest room smelled like chamomile and lemon oil, not the scent of apology, not even healing, just peace. The kind you only recognize after decades of noise. I moved in without boxes, just a weekend bag, a photo of me holding Olivia at 5, and a pair of slippers I hadn't worn since Madison's graduation. She'd found them in a storage bin. Mom Olivia had said, "I think it's time you came home," the real one. So I did. She gave me the bigger bedroom. Let me paint it sage green. Said I could grow tomatoes on the balcony if I wanted. Her daughter, my granddaughter, called me Lenny, a nickname she made up because Grandma felt too formal. Every morning we ate toast with jam and took turns picking the radio station. No one shouted. No one hid bank statements. No one told me I was too much or not enough. The world didn't applaud when I left them. No music played. No one threw me a party for surviving the kind of betrayal that makes your bones remember what pain is. But slowly, people stopped asking what happened and started saying, "You look good. You seem lighter." And the truth was, I was. I visited Madison once, at the facility. She didn't recognize me. Hair unkempt, eyes unfocused. She looked at me and said, "My mother died years ago. She left me. I didn't correct her, because in a way she was right. The version of me who took every insult, every exile, every backhanded thank you, she had died. And in her place stood a woman who didn't need to be invited anymore. I never remarried, never rebranded, never tried to erase the years that broke me. I just started using my full name again, Eleanor Brooks. And when people asked what I did, I said I rebuilt. No medals, no revenge speeches, no dramatic scene in the rain, just quiet. A balcony full of tomatoes, and the sound of my granddaughter laughing in the room next door. Some victories don't look like battles won. They look like mornings without fear, beds without tears, and names spoken with respect, even if only in your own head. I didn't win. I walked, and that was enough.